Hey, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent, and today, in the spirit of the life of Stephen Hawking, I'm going to do a top 10 sci-fi MMO list. These are games that explore science fiction. I did find some things that should satisfy your curiosity and give you something to play if you do have that hunger for science fiction and MMOs, which is generally populated by medieval fantasy. So I definitely will make an upcoming science fiction game list as well. But for right now, to quench your sci-fi thirst, I got 10 MMO I think you'll have some fun with. So coming in at number 10, we have Dark Orbit. This is kind of like the OG top-down arcade space shooter, and there's actually a lot of them nowadays that you can play in the browser. If you've played a .io game, you've probably played a game very similar to Dark Orbit. But Dark Orbit is an MMO, and there is a lot of progression in that, and there are some mechanics that are just kind of ingrained in it that you're not going to see in .io games, because .io games are really casual, light, and overall smaller, compartmentalized, minimalized themselves so that they are casual. So there's one game that I play a lot called Starblast.io, put it in a lot of top 10s, love it. But if you want to know the game that basically inspired a lot of these other IO games that still played in the browser and still can compete graphically with even some of the best, yeah, you need to be looking at Dark Orbit. Next up on the list, we have Elite Dangerous. Now, it's so low on the list because it's actually split into different games, kind of a little bit. I have the arena version, but the Elite Dangerous full game is also kind of debatable to be on the list because you can play single player, you can play with squads, or you can just have open matchmaking where you just play in the open universe. It's also a game that's really kind of exploration heavy, a little bit more vague, nebulous, literally, just kind of floating around, but the game is still being produced. Yeah, MMO is always in production, so let's look forward to the future of Elite Dangerous. But if you want to jump in now, if you have the right mindset, especially with the explorer mindset, I think you can have a really chill zen time. Moving through, we have a browser game again. It's called Starbreak. This is one of the interesting side-scroller MMOs that it definitely is like a dungeon diver. It's definitely kind of beat 'em up in some ways, but it focuses on a sci-fi aesthetic, and it still has like that comic book hero sort of aesthetic. There's like monsters and things in it, but it still has like the sci-fi roots all in between it in a sci-fi story. But I really like this game because when it comes to the side-scroller 2D beat-em-up type of games, I think Starbreak kind of just went a little bit extra with its shooting mechanics, and especially with its platforming, which you would expect would be more impactful in these kind of games, but they generally actually aren't. But with Starbreak, I feel like they just take it up a notch, and the dungeon diving is actually open, and it does have really big team raids, so it does actually feel like a proper MMO, which is something to always applaud. So actually, don't overlook Starbreak. It looks light, but it's actually pretty heavy. Now, next up on our list, I'm going to put Ingress. Now, this is a title that I think Stephen Hawking would really like to promote on a list like this, because the game itself is actually kind of a part of science fiction. Having an augmented reality MMO is still something that we fantasize about, and Ingress was like the first. It was like the first one that really attempted to be serious. And of course, that company went on to make Pokemon Go, and I believe they're now going to make a Harry Potter type of game, which is going to destroy mages. And we see some other augmented reality MMOs out there, but Ingress was the one that laid down the foundation, and the actual game itself is this sci-fi sort of aesthetic game. So it's so weird that it just so perfectly meshes with this list and with these concepts. I had to put this game, though if I did have to actually recommend a augmented reality MMO over the others, I would have to say Pokemon Go is actually still pretty legit. But Ingress, actually, there's still some players, there's still a hardcore community for it, so don't shy away from it. Next on the list, I'm going to put Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, I know some people probably want me to put Galaxies on here because you can play private servers of it. I'm debating if I want to do stuff like that, but probably I think Galaxies might be more in line with the ideas of proper sci-fi, where Star Wars: The Old Republic almost feels kind of fantasy with its mechanics, a little bit more wowy. But either way, Star Wars: The Old Republic, I'm going to throw it on here because it's freaking Star Wars. If there's anything that should be the shining lightsaber beacon of sci-fi, it's that. So how I feel about Star Wars: The Old Republic is that it is a paid game. It is technically free to play, but I feel like it's really kind of free to try, and there's just a lot of limitations with that. But aside from that, when it comes to actual Star Wars, it actually kind of has an okay-ish single-player campaign thing, and it kind of has some multiplayer. It's just kind of a little bit all over the place. But if you do want single player Star Wars, I'm pretty sure somebody in the comments is going to be like, hey, this list of games, play them in this order. And then if you do want to play an MMO Star Wars game, people are probably like, hey, go play the private server of Galaxies. But either way, on the list, I'm putting Star Wars, The Old Republic. Now halfway on our list, we have Star Trek Online. This is a game that I covered a few times for promotional reasons, and I've actually played it on PS4 as well. So I think it works pretty great on console if you're interested in that. It's one of the few really good free-to-play games out there. It's still a niche game, kind of like Lord of the Rings Online. I have put this game on a lot of top 10s, but it's always important to know, like, games have targeted audiences. So even though I can say it's a good game, it's good for the people who would generally like a game like this. That kind of sounds like a cop-out, but that's just the way it's designed. That's the way it works. Star Trek Online is the MMO for Star Trek nerds. So it definitely, though, even if you're kind of weary of Star Trek, or maybe you've only seen the new movies, it's still something worth checking out, and you don't really have an excuse because it is free to play to try it. You can play it, and then it's also on PS4. Next up, I want to talk about a game called Defiance. Now, also, kind of in its place, I want to talk about Firefall, because in my opinion, I loved Firefall. I thought it was so cool, but yeah, I'm going to show gameplay, and we're mainly going to talk about Defiance here. But to me, Firefall was kind of the most beautiful sci-fi MMO I've ever played, but it actually got shut down. But Defiance has actually kept going, and it actually had a TV show. I didn't see that. I don't know how good that was, but Defiance was kind of a big publishing. Like, there was kind of a lot of money thrown in its direction. So even if it's not as popular as it should have been, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be at least enough content to make it worth trying, at least. So it is a shooter type, openish world sci-fi game. I'm not going to say it's like an arena shooter level or anything like that, and it's probably not as deep as proper MMORPG, but Defiance has got some cool things about it. I mean, if you're looking for a sci-fi MMO, Defiance is one of the bigger publications out there. Coming in at number 3, I'm putting Planetside 2. This is the MMO FPS. And sure, there are some shooting MMOs, or they have shooting, you know, they have guns technically, but no, Planetside 2 is a literal MMO. Thousands of players, or hundreds of players at least, in battles, you know, contesting each other. It's like a whole server all fighting each other. It's intense, it's crazy, and then the fights are action-packed because it's literally true action. It is the action FPS MMO. You actually aim, you actually shoot, things actually travel through the air. And that's something to always stress. Now, I have seen some competitors attempting to claw their way through. You can almost say you can compare it to Darkfall New Dawn. There's a new game called Foxhole coming out. Planetside 2 for the sci-fi aesthetic, all the different, you know, cloaking gadgets and, you know, jetpacks and all the crazy stuff, especially since this is a mixed combat with vehicles and you have all like super suits. It's super sci-fi, it's super ridiculous, it's so massive, and that's why it's on the list. Our number 2 for top 10 sci-fi MMO is going to be Wildstar. And I have to kind of concede here and say Wildstar, as a massive game, actually is a little bit lacking. I mean, it's a big AAA MMO that went free to play, but a lot of the MMO content's kind of just completely gone to waste. However, if you play it like a dungeon diver and you just get a group of friends, or you jump into the Discord and run some dungeons, the end game raids especially, you can definitely find a place with Wildstar, and you're gonna make some memories. A lot of people think it's kind of a fantasy game, like, you know, maybe pseudo sci-fi comic book. I mean, maybe a little bit debatably, but it's really grounded in sci-fi, like cartoon sci-fi. If you think like, you know, the old like Bugs Bunny cartoons, and like, you know, the Martian, Marvin the Martian, you know, old stuff like that kind of Western cartoon art style, bring it in, bring in that aesthetic, but obviously still rooted, entwined with sci-fi love, heart, and soul. And that's what Wildstar is all about. And now, my number 1 sci-fi MMO, which I think I'm obligated to actually put in this placement, is going to be EVE Online. Yeah, it's that game, the game that's based on politics and guild versus guild, massive battles, literally world record breaking, in the space wild, wild west here. A myriad of ships, some ranging to potentially thousands of dollars worth of content, getting destroyed, blown up, and so the stakes are absolutely high. The time investment required to really play this game is intensive, and the people who play this game it's probably less of a game and more of a lifestyle. And that's totally fine. I think you can appreciate games like this, events like this, from, an outer perspective as well. I mean, it's literally a world record-breaking game, so I think everyone should definitely at least be putting their eyes on EVE. But I think it's kind of beautiful as a sci-fi game, and why it's so high up on the list, even though it's not too ridiculous, because it actually might be a little bit realistic. In fact, the idea of EVE is that humanity jumped through a black hole, a wormhole, or something like that, and then they were cut off from the root, humans, the root humanity. And so these factions grew out of, they had to fight over these resources, and they're literally the Wild West space. And you have the sandbox environment with these players really participating in this game mechanically, almost like a simulation could be of what would happen in the politics of what might occur inside the sci-fi setting, which eventually won't be fiction. It will eventually come about. So I think there's something beautiful about that, and the players that play this would probably agree. Thanks for watching, friends and family. So that was my top 10 sci-fi MMO, and I know there's a lot, but it seems that these games kind of shut down pretty often, like I mentioned earlier with Firefall, and a few others aren't doing so great. The foothold is mostly set for fantasy in the MMO genre, but I think we have room to grow. And I think that as long as we keep appreciating games like this, keep playing them, and hopefully as developers keep, growing these ideas and really stretching the imagination with the fiction as well as intertwining the science, I think we can have some really cool games. So I got an upcoming sci-fi MMO list. I'm excited for those titles, but if I've missed any games, please let me know in the comments below. And if you found any new games to play, remember to give it a thumbs up, all that good stuff, and subscribe and YouTube things, right? That's it, guys. Much love. Hope you had fun. I'll see you in the next one.